requires discussion. That's all I wanted to say about it. I don't suspect it's very straightforward.
Okay, well, why don't we deal with it after the witnesses have, yeah, okay. Okay, so we have with us appearing as an individual, Mr. Byron Weber Becker. Thank you for being here, Mr. Becker. And we have from the Electoral Reform Society of the United Kingdom, the Honourable Darren Hughes, Deputy Chief Executive, and Katie, is it Ghosh? Ghosh? Ghosh. Okay. Chief Executive. And from Dominion Voting Systems, we have John Poulos, President and Chief Executive Officer, and John McKinstry, the Account Executive. So the way we work is Mr. Weber Becker will have 10 minutes. Mr. Hughes and Ms. Ghosh will have 10 minutes to split, and Dominion Voting Systems, Mr. Poulos, Mr. McKinstry will split 10 minutes. Then we'll have a round of questions, which we can, where each member gets to ask questions. The time limit for each member of Parliament in their questioning of witnesses will be 7 minutes tonight. But we just have one round of 7-minute questions. So without further ado, we'll start with Mr. Weber Becker, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your time and energy that you are investing in the health of our democracy. You are investigating important issues related to how Canadians express their will as we elect our leaders. I very much appreciate the work that you are doing. I also appreciate this opportunity to address you regarding my own work. I teach computer science at the University of Waterloo, where I've been a faculty member for 25 years. I have also been interested in electoral reform for the last decade. Over the summer and into the fall, I combined my expertise in computer science with my interest in electoral reform to model many of the systems that have been proposed for Canada. Model is a critical word to understand in this context. This is the definition that I would like to use: the application of electoral system rules to data, producing results that assist in understanding the behavior of the system. I want to emphasize the last phrase. I'm trying to understand the overall behavior of electoral systems. My goal is not to predict who wins and who loses under a different system. That goal has many difficulties, including voters changing how they vote when the system changes. Instead, I'm attempting to use past elections to see if the system is well behaved. If it has been well behaved in many such elections, we can expect it to be well behaved in future elections, even if voters change how they vote. What does it mean for a system to be well behaved? I think this committee's own mandate provides a helpful definition that I'm sure you'll recognize. A well-behaved system reduces distortion and strengthens the link between voter intention and the election of representatives. Distortion is introduced when representation in government is significantly different from the level of popular support expressed in the election. A well-behaved system should not be arbitrary or erratic. First past the post, for example, will award a party earning 40% of the vote anywhere from 0 to 338 seats in the House of Commons. With a well-behaved electoral system, a small change in the votes cast should result in only a small change in the MPs elected. Another way to say that is that in a well-behaved system, the number of MPs awarded is proportional to the number of votes earned. With that preamble, let's dig into the meat of my results. Graphs like this are central to my methodology for understanding whether a system is well behaved. It shows the proportionality of an electoral system across 7 sets of data. This graph is for first past the post and shows what a misbehaving system looks like. In contrast, here is the graph of the rural-urban system. It is well behaved. Notice how each pair of colored lines track each other closely. Let's take a few moments to understand these graphs. The center, at 0%, represents the data from an actual election. In this case, first past the post, 2015. The heavy points are the percentage of the popular vote for a particular party. The Liberals earned almost 40% of the votes, the Conservatives 32%, and so on for the other parties. The lighter points reflect how the parties were rewarded with MPs in the House. The Liberals' 39% vote share turned into 54% of the MPs at the expense of the other parties, who received fewer MPs than they deserved. In 2015, First Past the Post was a misbehaving electoral system. But this is old news. We knew this on election night. What value have I added? Remember that we want to see how each electoral system behaves in many different but realistic elections, not just in 2015. We can simulate a different election by taking the 2015 results and shifting 10% of each Conservative candidate's vote to the local Liberal candidate. That might reflect an election in which late-breaking good news for the Liberals swings voters to their camp. Applying the first-past-the-post voting rules to that set of data gives the Liberals 64% of the MPs with only 43% of the vote. If we swing 30% of the Conservative votes to the Liberals, they get 81% of the seats, but still don't have a majority of the votes. Meanwhile, the effect on the Conservatives is devastating. 7% of the seats, in spite of earning 22% of the votes. Of course, we can also simulate the movement of Liberal voters to the Conservatives. That is shown in the left side of the graph. Other graphs can simulate votes shifting between other combinations of parties. First-past-the-post misbehavior plays out in previous elections as well. These four graphs represent 4 real elections and 24 simulated elections. First-past-the-post did not give a proportional result in any of them. Let's move on to take a brief look at some of the other electoral systems. The rural-urban proportional system is very well behaved. Here's the graph applying those rules to the 2015 election data and simulated related elections where votes swing between Conservatives and Liberals. Recall that the heavy lines represent the popular vote, while the lighter lines indicate the number of MPs. The important thing to note is how the two lines track each other very closely. Here are the graphs based on earlier elections. In each case, the system is well behaved. I like the rural-urban proportional system as proposed by Fair Vote Canada because it addresses our huge disparity in riding sizes. It keeps our already huge ridings at about the same size by electing a single MP in those ridings. It gains proportionality by using multi-member ridings where higher population densities make that feasible. Finally, a small layer of top-up seats, like are used in MMP, offsets the disproportionality of the single-member seats. That top-up layer is important. Rural-urban proportional is inspired by Kingsley's proposal, but it is not the same. Kingsley's proposal leaves off the top-up layer. When we model that, the result is surprisingly good, but not as good as rural-urban. I've also modeled STV, single transferable vote, where with both small ridings averaging 4.1 MPs, as well as larger ridings averaging nearly 11 MPs. Both are well behaved, but predictably the system with the larger ridings does better. Modeling mixed member proportional, or MMP, with two sizes of top-up regions also shows that it is also well behaved. Alternative vote has the distinction of being the only system I modeled that misbehaved more than first past the post. Using data from 4 real elections and 72 simulated elections, alternative vote did not produce a single proportional result. Another alternative that might seem attractive is to keep exactly the same riding boundaries that we have now, but enlarge the House with 10% more MPs, making them top-up seats similar to MMP. We might call this MMP light if we elected MPs in the local ridings using first past the post, or we could call it AV plus if we elected MPs using the alternative vote. While both of these systems would be a step towards proportionality, my modeling shows that it would be a very small step, even with the best case scenario of calculating top-up seats over each province, rather than smaller regions as is common with MMP. A 10% top-up simply is not enough to overcome the disproportionalities of all those single-member ridings. But if we use exactly the same constraints with the rural-urban system, that is, 32 extra MPs assigned to top-up seats and calculated at the provincial level, we get a well-behaved system. Thank you for your attention thus far. I've gone over some very detailed and technical material. You may feel at this point like my brother, who said, "That makes my head hurt." Nevertheless, I believe it is important information for your decisions. Let me summarize. First past the post frequently misbehaves. Secondly, alternative vote is worse than first past the post. Thirdly, STV, MMP, and rural-urban are all well-behaved across many different simulations. And lastly, MMP Light, half-hearted attempts like MMP Light and AV Plus are only slightly better than what we have now. Rural-urban, under exactly the same constraints, is excellent. The program that I've written and the input data is available for anyone to download and run or modify. The results I've shown here are readily available on the web at electionmodeling.ca. Thank you again for your attention and for the incredible service that you are performing for Canada. I look forward to your questions on my comments here, as well as my earlier submission to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Weber Becker. Our heads may hurt, but it's a small price to pay for the insights that your models have brought to our discussion. We'll go now